Who knows when you're ready? You just dive in and do it.
Welcome to another episode of Chewing the Fat. I am your host, Big Rob. Thank you so much for tuning in, downloading the podcast. I certainly do appreciate that. The folks that have bought me a coffee at chewingthefatbr.com, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. And the folks recently that have put the 5-star ratings and written reviews, thank you so much for that. It does help the podcast find more listeners, and that is what this is all about. My guest today is in studio down from Greenville. Please welcome voice actor Ian Russell. Ian.
Morning, Rob. How are we?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's a pleasure. You know, you're in the area and would be rude not to, wouldn't it, really?
So Ian just wrapped up a 2-day workshop on voiceover here in Augusta with our friends down at Le Chat Noir and Gather by the Ghostlight, another amazing podcast. And I was privileged to take part in your workshop. It was really eye-opening, especially in the genre of like video games and animation and stuff like that. Of course, we had done one of the Gather by the Ghostlight audio dramas together previously, the Butcher Pete piece.
The random Brit in the mix.
So thank you, one, for sharing your knowledge. I've said it time and time again since I've gone full-time into voiceover, how welcoming and open and inspiring the community of voiceover really is and helping others. It really is,
yeah. And I went through all of that as well a decade or so ago where everybody's so warm and welcoming and all boats float higher and everybody's willing basically just to give the shop away, to know everything they know, because there's so much opportunity that you're not really viewed so much as a competitor as you are a colleague.
Exactly. And that is one of the things that I do love about voiceover and just the experience of meeting people. I even mentioned in the workshop today, is probably one of my favorite parts about doing this is the networking, the meeting the people, helping people along. You know, it's kind of someone gave me a hand up, I'm gonna give them a hand up as well.
Absolutely.
Share that knowledge.
And long may that continue. I think you do feel that sometimes because I was helped. Because you were helped, when you get the opportunity, you feel almost an industry-wide obligation, don't you? An ethical obligation that if you had help, it's right and proper to help somebody else.
Absolutely. Now, Ian, you don't sound like you're a Greenville native necessarily. I mean, you might be.
Recognize my southern accent.
That's right. Where are you from originally?
Well, when asked that, it's a hard question for me to answer. I've always been a bit of a nomadic brat. In fact, we've lived in Spartanburg, South Carolina, just over from Greenville for now 11 years.
Oh, wow.
And I've never lived in a single place before for more than a decade.
Oh, wow. So congratulations.
So this is, I'm almost becoming a local now.
Yeah.
But I was born in London. But I never really count myself as a Londoner. My parents moved away when I was, small baby.
Right.
I grew up as a young boy on the south coast of England. So that's where I get my standard Southern English accent from.
That's where the Southern accent's from.
That's where it comes from. But both my parents were from London, so I can go a bit there if I have to. And then we moved to Scotland.
Oh, wow.
And I spent another decade going to high school and all of that in Scotland. So, I drop into that once a while as well. Yeah. Which, of course, growing up, I never knew that all that was going to be useful later on. But,
you were learning. You were just learning by immersion.
I've been training all my life, yeah.
That's awesome.
Then college and post-college. And then at one point, I ended up going and working overseas in Belgium and Holland. That's where I met my wife, who's American.
Wow.
Then we moved back to the UK, to Oxford, and then here. So I've lived in, lots of different places.
I love that.
Where am I from? Wherever I lay my hat.
Oh, I love that. But that, like you said, that all of those lived-in experiences have kind of helped you in what you're doing for a career now.
Yeah. Ironically, you don't think it at the time. Sometimes you feel, because my childhood was quite fragmented, living in lots of different places. I'm not sure I really, think about that at the time, do you? But it was, it's making new friends all the time. Was also, although I didn't know it at the time, a useful learning experience.
Yeah.
And as an adult, I'm Sandra says it, my wife, she says, when you go in a room, she says, I can see you working the room, she says. But it's not a conscious thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, I like saying hi to people.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were growing up, and I guess in most people start to kind of decide, and there's the question, what are you going to do when you grow up, when you hit high school and that type of thing. Was voice acting, was that one of those things that you were pursuing?
No.
Really? Okay.
No. I mean, I'd done all the school theatre, high school theatre, all that kind of stuff. But when we moved to Scotland, the school there didn't have a drama teacher.
Oh, wow.
But my mum was always a community actress. And wherever she went, if there was no theatre group, suddenly one appeared because she did it. So she started community theatre in the village that I lived in Scotland. So I kind of helped out with that. And then when I went to university, again, not really on the radar, but I went to the theatre. I watched theatre.
Yeah.
And then when I finished college and I went to my first job as a teacher in the northwest of England, the house I rented, I rented a sort of a flat inside a house that a family owned, and the two daughters of the people that lived there were going and joining the local community theatre there, and they said, "Hey, do you want to come?" Because I was like, new guy on the block. No, I didn't know anybody, and I guess they were being empathetic to my situation.
Yeah.
So I went, and they were just auditioning for a play, and I auditioned, and they cast me in the lead.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Which was, I don't know, it was no expectation, but, there you go. And I ended up, over the course of the decade that I lived there, I ended up helping to run and I don't know, 3 shows a year, full productions.
Yeah.
And I probably played, there's 30 productions, say, plus pantomimes, which gave us the money to run the rest, really. And I don't know, I must have played 20 leads across that period, and supporting and directing and lights and sound, and you just get immersed.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Holland with work, and it all stopped again. I didn't do acting again for another 15 years.
Wow.
And then we were now living in Oxford. Sandra and I are now married. We've now got kids, and I'm doing silly voices with the kids at bedtime and all that. And she bought me a voiceover, an introduction to voiceover course, one day thing up in London, kind of get out the house, that kind of thing. Little did she know that was kind of where that all started, really. And it was not, I'm not one of those people who always craved, I'm going to be a professional actor or anything like that. And voiceover, oddly. So when I was moving to the States, and I said to the guy in London, I actually asked him, does anybody get paid to do this?
Wow.
That's how unprepared I was.
Wow.
And he said, yeah. And I said, would they ever hire me? He went, don't see why not. And that was the ringing endorsement with which...
Don't see why not.
Went, okay, I'll give that a go.
That's the motivational quote in your studio, right? Don't see why not.
Don't see why not.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, I say it jokingly, but actually, when you think about it, I don't see why not is quite a strong thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Just feel the fear and do it anyway, really.
Yeah, what is it? They say there are, hundreds of thousands of people that are half as qualified as you, doing more than you because they have more courage to just do it.
They're just doing it.
Because they're just doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think you're ready, you're ready.
Yeah.
Just, dive in and have a go.
No, I love that. So that's when you moved to the U.S., that was the job, or did you move back to do something else?
Well, no. Again, even then, so the move to the States came, it was like, I guess, several motivating factors, but Sandra's mum had passed away, so her dad, who was, I guess, in his late 70s, early 80s at that point, she wanted to spend more time with him.
Yeah.
I had been working in finance in a bank, and I remember sort of 10, 15 years ago, the banks had some issues around remaining being banks.
Right.
So there was all this stuff going on, and we were like, well, let's just sell everything and go. We'll just move to the States. And that's when I went. It was maybe a year after I'd had that first course, and I went to him and I said, okay, well, we're going to move to the States. I have to do something. I have to make a choice. I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
With no expectations, really. If it didn't work out, it didn't work out. I'd have to go and do something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I jokingly often say, I'd go to the local Jaguar dealer and sell Jaguars to unsuspecting Americans.
Right. I love that. Do you remember back in when you're doing your acting, your stage acting, whether it was in school, do you remember like one of your first roles? Or one that you really loved?
Well, my first waking memory, like formative memory, is of being backstage in a theater. I was clearly not. I was probably like 2 years old or something. I don't know how old.
Oh wow!
Because my mother constantly, she was taking me to the theater and sticking me in a corner while she was doing what she was doing.
Yeah.
And I have formulated a picture of it, but really, it's that musty, dusty wood smell. Of the stage boards and the flats and it's that slightly probably moldy and probably not very healthy air. That's my first abiding memory.
Oh wow!
My first role, again maybe Nanook the Eskimo and the Christmas tree. How old would I have been? Probably 7-ish, around about there. We were doing 2 shows. I remember so I was playing the lead, Nanook.
Okay.
Start as you mean to carry on. And I was all set up to do the 2 shows. And I can remember at one point I was told, you're going to do Nanook on day 1 and some other kid is going to do Nanook on day 2. And I was like, how dare they give my role away? It was a diva even then. Through high school, pretty much, involved all the way through from there. You get the bug, I think. And I suppose throughout my life, I've left it and I've come back and I've left it. And circumstances have always presented acting as an opportunity back to me. Maybe that's the universe just whispering at me. Maybe I was always called, but I just never knew it.
I've often told my wife, especially when we were dating, I was like, look, you have to give me like the big flashing red neon sign if you need something, because otherwise I don't understand subtlety and hints and whispers in the bush and that type of stuff. I don't know exactly what you, unless you're like this, do this. So I can definitely appreciate the fact that maybe you just didn't realize that it's like, hey,
no,
do this thing.
And so I ended up in sales, which I think for a long time I was playing the role of a salesman, rather than actually being a sales, if that makes sense. An advisor to someone. And I think again there was a moment where I kind of woke up to the idea of you need to just be in the moment rather than constantly thinking about what you should be doing next. Almost becoming that adulting moment, I think. And I don't think there's any doubt about it that my career as an advisor, as a financial advisor, absolutely exploded after that light bulb moment. I was successful before, but once I realized I could relax and I could say to a client, "Nah, it's all right, don't worry about it. I'll go see someone else." As soon as you start saying no, people start saying, "Oh well, wait, don't leave quite yet." And it's the same now with voiceover. That whole auditioning process of not worrying about it, not hanging on to the potential of the opportunity, not having a relationship with the fact that you were cast when you haven't yet been cast. Right. You want that role so badly. You can't think that way, I don't think. I think you have to, rinse and repeat.
And I think that, there are roles that come across and you're like, oh, I would be perfect for this. This would be great. Or if it's a franchise or something that you want to be a part of, yeah, there's a little bit that like, but
there's absolutely a craving, a desire.
But you have to do the audition and you can think, yeah, I'm going to book that, but I'm also about to audition for something else too. And until they, contact you.
Never over until the fat lady sings, metaphorically, until you get the email, your availability check, or you get a phone call saying you booked it. There's no point in, that's something you can't control.
Right.
It's the caster who makes that choice, not me.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're in the US, you're deciding to do voiceover. You have an interesting tale of that you shared on kind of that first U.S. introduction into voiceover as well.
Yeah. So I arrived on Thursday, got off the airplane. The story is longer than that, but that's where we'll start this particular story. I think otherwise we'll be here all day. And I walked into a studio in Greenville, a radio studio, on the Monday. There was a guy there called Stan Fisher who ran a voiceover workshop, which you had talked about over the weekend, actually, the value of those things. And I walked into him and I did my thing. And he said, well, we've got this showcase coming up on Sunday next week. Why don't you come? So, all right, I can turn up. So I turned up and did my thing, and you get feedback from the guy that's running the showcase. And afterwards I went up to him and I said, so what happens next? And he said, well, I'm going to sign you to my roster. So I didn't realize, the complete naivety. So he was an agent, an Atlanta agent called Jeffrey Umberger, who people in the area, everybody knows who Jeffrey is. And over a decade later, he's now a manager at ACM Talent Management, and he's my talent manager at ACM Talent Management. And we've had this decade-plus long working relationship from, that
doing
random,
a workshop moment and a showcase.
And that whole other point of, he signed me like I'd been in the country 4 minutes. And he said he was going to sign me, and he actually sent me an audition for HSBC the following week. I didn't even own a microphone.
Wow.
I recorded it on my iPad.
Wow. Did you book it?
No.
Okay. I was just curious.
No surprise there.
I'm sure
that would have rounded that story off, wouldn't it?
Oh, that would have been amazing.
No, I did not. I did not book it. But so I've done everything backwards. And that comes back to the thing. Who knows when you're ready?
Yeah.
You just dive in and do it. And you ask the questions. What if I hadn't said to Jeffrey, what happens next? What if I'd done my thing and then been the shy retiring guy in the corner and said thanks very much and left?
Yeah.
What happens if I hadn't asked that question?
Yeah. Wow. And how different your life may be.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it still would have worked out the way that it is, but maybe it would have taken actually 3 weeks instead of just 2.
That's funny. Or he gets the audition for HSBC and he remembers this mad Brit that, and he gives Stan a call and Stan goes, oh yeah, that was, who knows? Maybe it would have still all happened. But you think about those like sliding doors kind of moments that, if I hadn't done this, or if I hadn't done that, or if I had done this, or I had done that, would things have worked out differently or not? But they worked out how they did. And I'm glad I asked the question. I hope he is. I drive down to Atlanta a couple of times a year just to have coffee and a chat with him because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's great that you have a relationship with it because it is a partnership. I mean, when you have a manager, they're looking out for your best interest because it's for their best interest that your best interest is looked out.
Absolutely. We always have to remember I think there's and I think early on I suffered from this a little bit. It was my agent, I mustn't bother them. And you don't want to bug them. You don't want to be the squeaky wheel trying to get the grease in that sense. But I think you do have to communicate, what you're doing, what you aspire for. If you don't let people who can cast you know what you're doing well, what you're booking, the kind of things you're booking, what kind of things you aspire to book, they're not mind readers, they won't know. And so, it's important to communicate.
Yeah. Is that how you kind of found video games? Because some of your branding now is the, is the British voice, the video game
guy. Yeah. I mean, so the video game brandy thing came after. I mean, I'd booked enough video games for me to think I must be okay at this. So we decided, and it's a lot of fun, let's face it. Yeah. You get to wave your arms around and cuss a bit and people give you money. I mean, it's like, that's surreal, isn't it? Right. But you get to a point where you can't be all things. You realize you can't be all things to all men. And so you start realizing what things you're booking well and so on. And when you're trying to create a public face, a branding face, video games are at the cool end of voiceover. And so it's in some senses easier to promote a public persona that is a video game person than a public persona that is, I don't know, an explainer video guy, right. and not to say there is anything, there is mountains,
narration guy.
Right. But, or that said, if your marketing and your focus is on that, probably the way you market yourself will be different to the way I market myself. Yeah. As a public facing person. So, you're talking to corporate people all the time about the fact that you've done this mountain of corporate work for all the top global companies in the world. You're creating a vision in the purchaser's mind that you're a trusted person in that field. Yeah. And I think that's what we decided with the video game thing. How did that all happen? Kind of by, you spin the wheel. It's not this comes back to, I don't control that. Yeah. So you audition, I auditioned for everything, and some people hire me for some things and some people hire me for others. I would still call myself a voiceover generalist. And as I've said before, if you're looking to find ways in which voiceover is financially more important to you, then commercial is probably the place to go first, rather than video games. Although I know we all crave, the animation and the video games. That's where the cool boys hang out. Right. So I don't think there was any kind of conscious decision to be a video game guy. But it happened, and then you lean into it. It becomes your niche and you lean into it. Yeah.
I talked with Tom Pinto, who does a lot of like narration, in-show narration, things like that. I coached with him a little bit. And one of the things, because I love that work. I love the storytelling. I love the long narrative type stuff. But Tom said, very similar to what you're saying, he's like, narration, in-show narration, he's like, that's the candy store. It's great to be in there and get all the treats. He's like, but you have to have money to go into the candy store. Yeah. And commercials where you make the money so that you can then spend some time in the candy store.
Yes. I think I endorse that view. Yeah. I endorse Tom Pinto.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
He is.
So what was, because you are an award-winning voice actor.
Yeah.
And
how special am I?
You are. I mean, you really are. It's something that not everybody can say. But for your video games, you've won some awards. Specifically, what are some of the games that you've won awards for?
So I kind of color that picture, if you like. So it took me 5 or 6 years to gather the courage, as it were, to actually put work up that was going to be judged, and are you worthy? That was quite a moment. That was 2019, so it was 6 years ago. And then I guess once you've gone over that fear moment, and in 2019, I had no expectations at all, clearly. And I received 2 nominations that year, one for gaming, Warhammer game, and one for Voice of the Year.
Oh, wow.
That was One Voice in London. And I'm in South Carolina, and I get a phone call from one of my agents who says, "Congratulations." And I'm like, for what?
Mm-hmm.
And they went, you've been nominated as video game voice and voice of the year. And I went, have I? No, it was that classic moment,
Right?
but it was, but it was a moment where you're like, oh my goodness, my peers have, whether I win or not,
Right.
considered that my wife, my work, certainly my wife is worthy of note, but my work is worthy enough to be mentioned.
Yeah.
And that was quite a moment,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to my wife, I said, I had no intention going to London for the awards night, but I kind of feel it's that I have to, because what if?
Right.
And I'm not in the room. What if? And I'm not in the room. So I had to go. I went to London. I didn't win, but
right.
So that was where that started.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, so now I have to follow that up, don't I? So since then, I've always put in something. If I've got something, anything like that's video game related,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put that up. And in the last 6 years, whatever I've put up has been nominated 5 out of the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So that also gives flavor to that whole branding thing of being a video game guy. You got something that says, hey, look, Mr. Video Game Developer Guy, this, I hope, will give you comfort that I'll do a decent job for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it ultimately does for you.
Yeah.
It strokes your ego a little bit and it makes you feel confident. But if we're in business, we're always saying, well, how can this help move my business forwards?
Yeah.
I guess once you get nominated, you've got a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 8 probability of being the name that comes out of the hat. And I've been lucky enough to come out of the hat twice.
That's awesome.
The first one was 2021 for a character called Vernon Locke, who's was the main operator character in a bank heist game called Payday 2. And in fact, October this year, I've been playing him for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So he's been very central to my journey,
Yeah.
if you like, as a voice actor. As a quick aside to that, though, the first nomination, the Warhammer one that I mentioned, during the casting process of that, the fact that I had been playing Locke had created a fan community in my awareness, and I had a Twitter X account, Twitter as it was then, and it had about 5,000 followers. So when third round of casting for this Warhammer game, and they tell me it's down to the last 2 people, and I said, well, okay, clearly you hire whoever's the right person. Kind of wish you hadn't told me it was between him and her, or 2 of us, because now if I don't get it, I'll know I was that close, and that'll be disappointing.
Right,
That was
right.
going through my head. But you need to know that I have 5,000 video game followers who would all get to hear about me being in the game. So the first nomination actually came out, at least as I still believe in my head that one of the reasons they chose me ahead of the other person was because I had a video game following,
little bit larger following.
You know?
Wow.
So that led to my first thing. And then Locke gave me my first win back in 2021. The second win was 2023, was 2 years later, which was a character called George, who's an older gentleman who has dementia in a game called Burnhouse Lane, which is actually quite a small indie studio making kind of point and click adventures. You know, those paper dolls with the arms that kind of move around like that. That's what they look like on the screen. It's that sort of it's a 2D scrolling screen and you point and click. But a really interesting studio. They're making games tackling sensitive subjects. This particular game, the opening scene, the main character whose story you follow, we discover her partner has died from cancer. So she's dealing with that. She's received a diagnosis of herself of having terminal cancer.
Oh my
So
gosh.
she's coming to terms with that. She's a nurse, so she kind of understands the situation. And she attempts to commit suicide.
Oh, wow.
In the opening scene.
Oh my gosh.
Kind of sets the
Wow.
tone. So he's dealing with, so the story deals with her grappling with that reality. And then, she then takes this one last job going down to Cornwall to look after this old guy who's got dementia, and kind of dealing with that as well. That's become a real big issue for society, has it not? Yeah. And it gets a bit weird after that, but he's approaching those really difficult subjects, and I guess confronting people with them a little bit in a game form.
Wow.
And about how this character deals with all of those things. And maybe people who play that game, who have relatives who, either going through the same kind of medical issues, or, dementia is a big thing. Most people know someone. Like I say, my own dad passed away, having had dementia, Alzheimer's, for 3-4 years. Wow. And I think that my performance of him certainly drew on those experiences, and I'd like to think that's a part of why the performance shone.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a memory for my dad.
Almost like a little small homage.
Yeah, like an homage. Yeah, absolutely. So that gives me a warm fuzzy as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool. And that's not the thing you would think of when someone approaches with a game.
What was your award-winning performance? Well, it was in this game where I played a guy with dementia.
two cancer patients, wow.
Yeah. It is one of the beauties, I think, though, of the indie scene in video games. A lot of not to denigrate the big successful studios, but there is maybe something along the Hollywood lines that when you're investing tens of millions of dollars in development of something, maybe you make safer choices about the game that you're developing. Yeah, that will lean into what people want, that kind of thing. Whereas indie developers can take more risks. Yeah, they basically got less to lose, as it were. Yeah, so you see in the indie game space lots of really creative, beautiful looking games. Great stories, inventive scenarios. It really is worth, I think, like digging below that first tier of, what are you going to play today, Call of Duty or Fortnite, Right. Digging below the surface and discovering some of these indie developers who are just making wonderful, wonderful stuff.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome that type of work is out there. I think it's encouraging, especially for people that might be listening and they're like, I deal with this and I wish there was a platform that I could do this, that, or the other. That's why I started the podcast, is for dealing with my own depression and anxiety. We were in lockdown and things like that. And I knew there were other people dealing with that as well. So I'm like, you know what? Let's create community. Let's
go and look have at that conversation. His name's Ren Michalski, Burnhouse Lane, Harvester Games. So that's Burnhouse Lane, but he did one called Lorelei, I think it is. One's called The Cat Lady, which I think deals with loneliness and mental health issues. So he's I know the title of his next game, but I don't know where he's coming from with it yet. Okay. But I'm hoping there's something in it that I can help out with, because I really appreciate him as a developer.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Him and his brother.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So from winning the awards and doing the work that you're doing, and living your life here in the States, I talked about being during the lockdown. Did that affect your work a whole lot? I mean, I know there were a lot of new people decided to find voiceover because everybody was locked into their house already. Yeah. So there's an influx of people getting on Upwork and Fiverr and this, that, and the other. Yeah. Did it affect, because you at that time would have been, 5-6 years into the game? Yeah. At that point?
If we think 2019 was when I flew to London for that awards thing, and when I came back, no, it wasn't then. It was maybe the following February when my dad became ill, and I flew over to see what was going on and help out there. And I flew back on the February, and I was 2 days later, everything locked down. Yeah. And before I answer your question, what I remember most about that was it was maybe the first time in my life where I was seriously scared. I had these things going through my head about if there was a bowl of M&Ms and one of them was a cyanide pill, would you eat any one of those M&Ms? And the answer is 1 in 100. I'm not going to take that risk.
Right.
Or some weird scenario where there's some psychopath at the end of the street taking pot shots, and he's going to shoot and kill every 100th person that walks past his house. Would you walk down the street? No, you wouldn't.
Right.
But the mortality early on in COVID was about 1 in 100.
Yeah.
It was seriously scary, and I did not want to go out.
Yeah.
And dealing with that, we're talking about mental health, and I think dealing with that was the first time I'd really been faced with something that was messing with my head. What did it do for my business? I mean, not only did it get a lot of people became aware of voiceover as an opportunity, it created a lot of work in the voiceover business. I have an enormous amount of empathy for people who were affected badly by it, but it was good for the business. It was good for business. If you imagine in the e-learning space, everyone making new content about health and safety in the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah.
All these people now working from home, and training staff to address those kind of issues.
Yeah.
On a very more personal level, as a Brit, the large market for British voice is London, right? And I'm in South Carolina, and no agent in London is in the slightest bit interested in me because they've got 10,000 British male high-quality voice actors on their doorstep.
Right.
COVID hits, everyone shuts down. A lot of those talent didn't have home studios, but the content creation was continuing. So there were people in London going, anyone out there with a good home studio? And I'm like, over here, me. And agent in London called Damn Good Voices, Simon Cryer. He said, okay, great. I'll put you on for 6 months while we get through this, just to help everyone else do that. Yeah. And here we are 6 years later, and I'm still on his roster, and we're still doing business together. So that was something that changed because of COVID. I got an agent in London, which has given me access to some cool stuff. I booked much of it because I think now that London's back open again, and has been for several years now, I think the pendulum has swung back to, let's hire people locally where we can. But I'm seeing stuff. So I'm in the mix, aren't I? I got the opportunity to throw my hat in the ring.
Yeah.
All that content was suddenly being made. And Hollywood, if you think about entertainment, all the filmmaking shut down. And so suddenly a lot more kind of animated content was suddenly out there for grabs as well. And I guess video games as well. A lot of people were playing video games because they were at home. Yeah. So, it gave boosts to all those industries. Yeah. And that had a knock-on effect for our industry.
Yeah. Do you think that that kind of inhale during COVID has now started to subside, and they're exhaling, and those products and those opportunities are becoming fewer now, or it's still there if you know how to market yourself and how to find it?
I mean, if we talk about specifically video games, for example, I mean, the value of the video game business is more than film and TV put together.
Wow.
It's just a enormous business. So there's work for everyone. Yeah. But I think sometimes we forget that it's maybe first and foremost a business rather than a creative endeavor, what we do. Yeah. And it's that, if you think about the 80-20 rule, we need to spend 80% of our time chasing and hustling and auditioning and negotiating and networking in order to be able to have the 20% of the time that we spend in front of the microphone, waving our arms around and having fun. Right. We spend a lot more time doing the other stuff than we do doing the stuff.
Yeah. I know that was one of the big revelations to me is that this is a business, and I need to be better at running my business. No matter how good I am at the performing side of things, I need to be better at running the business so that, like you said, I have that opportunity to do the waving around and the screaming.
And it leans into something you said earlier about there are people who maybe are they're not as good an actor as some of these other people who are brilliant actors, but maybe they're a bit more disciplined, or maybe they're a bit more skilled at the hustle, or maybe they're just a bit more willing to get up early and send out the emails.
Yeah.
And the chances are they'll be more successful.
Yeah.
It's a sad thing, but it's the reality of life.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Ian, for you, what brings you joy right now?
Yeah. I think what I'm really seeing at the moment is my kids like blossoming into young adults. That's really, satisfying as a parent, I think. Outside, it would, I know we're here on a business thing, but let's talk about that for a minute. My eldest graduated from college from USC in Columbia. Nice. And she's stayed there, and she's found work that she likes, working in the library service. And she seems to be settling into, if you like, an adult life routine. And that's nice to see. And my youngest, who's now at college, but she was like, she's the one with the wanderlust. The eldest is more of a homebody. The youngest, the one is she's got the wanderlust, and she wanted to go to college in England.
Oh wow!
And that's what she did. Nice. So she's at the University of Leeds in the UK. And I guess almost a year, academic year, we're starting to wind down that now. And she's her whole thing. She's studying East Asian studies. She's learning Chinese, amongst other things. And at some point, her desire is to like get off and up and away and go and visit those countries, maybe work in those countries, or at least adjacent, and just to see their, those small humans that you held in the palm of one hand, when they were tiny, and you were like, oh my goodness, what oh dear, what have I done, kind of thing.
Right.
There's a like suddenly this responsibility for another life hits you. Yeah. And I think as you become, there's two things, about empty nesting, that you miss them because they've always been there. But there's the thrill of ultimately as a parent, our job is surely to create individuals that can stand on their own 2 feet and, occupy a space in the world and be at peace with themselves. Yeah. And I don't know that they're there yet, but I see them forming. I see them becoming more adulty humans, if that makes sense. Yeah. Still with the ability to play, which is also nice. The eldest is very much into that whole D&D scene. Nice. So she's still very creative on that side. And the youngest was much more into the voiceover and is still like chipping away at that a little bit. I don't think it's her passion, but my wife, Sandra, she had my eldest absolutely nailed on. She's going to work in the because she loves books, right? She can work in the library system. She thinks that the youngest will end up back somewhere in the entertainment business somewhere. Okay. She had a thing a couple of years ago where she wanted to make documentaries. Oh. Okay. And now she's really in love with East Asian history, and I'm like, maybe those things will all
it's a good subject
come around and come together, and who knows what's going to happen. But I think that's really giving me joy.
It's one of those things, like you said, when you see them and you don't want them to like make mistakes, and when you see it coming, maybe it's a mistake you made in your life and you're like, you really don't need to do that, and they don't want to listen, but you have to kind of let them make the mistake to learn the lesson.
The hardest thing in the world, I think, is to want to take over and solve the problem rather than taking a half step back and saying, hey, I'm here if you need me, the door's always open, right? But good luck.
All right, Ian, this is the second segment of the show. This is where we dive a little bit deeper into your mental health journey. I definitely believe that it is, especially depression, is one of those things that wants to tell you you're alone. So the more we can talk about it, the more we realize that kind of everybody goes through this. Everybody has a down day, a dark day.
Yeah.
So for you, how do you keep the darkness at bay?
It is interesting. I think I mentioned earlier about COVID. It was the first time in my life where I think I was truly afraid. Mm-hmm. I mean, seriously afraid. There were altercations at school and bullying and all that kind of thing, which I think I dealt with by knowing who I was, mm-hmm. and that I was, the bullies were it lacked something that they were trying to compensate for. Yeah. And whilst I'm not sure I could have articulated that at that time, mm-hmm. I think I dealt with it knowing that I'm actually okay. I'm not a bad person. Mm-hmm. So I guess I learned that very early, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So how do I deal with the down days? Is look back at where I've come from, and I think remember that there are good days. Yeah. Don't think that it will always be dark. And I know that's probably real difficult, but even now, and I'm having a real marquee 6 months or so in voiceover, but it is a business that has hills and valleys, mm-hmm. and some of the valleys can be pretty deep, and mm-hmm. and you can be like wondering where your next booking is coming from. And I think you have to remember, or what I try and remember, is that if the process has worked before, there's a pretty high probability that the process will work again. Mm-hmm. And that not to throw all the good things that you've done in the past out the window just because no one's booking you right now. Mm-hmm. If it's a work thing. Mm-hmm. And I suppose that's true across your life. Mm-hmm. If a relationship or whatever is having a dark moment, reflecting back that it wasn't always like that there are good days, and that therefore there will be good, the sun will set and it will rise again tomorrow, mm-hmm. and that's an opportunity to have a good day. Yeah. So I think probably that's what I do. And I can remember there are times where I'm like, I'm in the office and I'm doing the grind bit, mm-hmm. and I'm like not in the right headspace for it. Yeah. And it's having, I think maybe I have sometimes, not always, sometimes I'll just push through, mm-hmm. and I'll go, okay, I'm just going to do one. Mm-hmm. I really don't want to do this auditioning malarkey. I'm not enjoying it. It's, but I got a target and all this, mm-hmm. A business requirement. Yeah. And sometimes I'll just push through, and you do one and you're okay, I've done one, I can do another one. Mm. So I'll do another one, and then I don't know, the light bulb will go on, the switch will go on, and I'll start enjoying it again. Mm. And sometimes you'll do that and it doesn't work. And it's having the wherewithal or the comfort or the knowledge that it's okay to walk away. Yeah. Yeah. It is another sort of help me, if you like. Yeah. That it's okay to walk away. It's okay for it not to be beautiful and sunny all the time. That's actually okay. Everybody has that. Yeah. And come back tomorrow. Sun will set, sun will rise, and it'll be different tomorrow. Yeah. And that's one thing as far as like with auditioning, and when you're acting, you're performing, if you are not in the right place to perform, your performance will suffer for it. Inevitably, I think that's true. You can't, sometimes, yes, depending on the piece, you may be able to push through and get, or sometimes you're like, I need to do it just to know that I've done it and I know it's going to suck. You know what I mean? And let me not send it in, have done it, and realize, okay, I've got to step away. I'm not going to send that because that's not representative of me. So yes, but the but here is, even if I'm not entirely happy with it, it's not me that's making the casting choice. And whilst I might not think that it's the best performance I've ever done or could do for that particular piece of audition, someone else is making that choice, not me.
Yeah.
And it's no reflection on me whether they choose to hire me or not based on that performance. And certainly that whole pushing through, and I'm like, I'm just going to do one, I'm just going to do another one, I'm just going to do another one. Sure as eggs is eggs, the day or the 2 days later, I'll get a you booked it. Just because you did the work.
Right.
You know, and you were, in that sense, strong enough to just push through.
Yeah.
And someone liked it well enough.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about, your dad and dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. I know there are other people that are having to go through that stuff. I know my mother is in the hospital. She doesn't have dementia that I've seen, but every nurse that comes through asks, does she have any dementia? Does she, she's 86 years old. She's been in the hospital for a month at this point. I'm like, no, she's just, she's on these painkillers and things like that to deal with the surgery she's had and stuff like that. So she's a little loopy. Luckily, I spent enough time with her to know she's just loopy and not knowing what's going on. But it's still hard. There are days that I sit there, just in the hospital room, and she's asleep the whole time, or she's, in pain, and I'm trying to hit the red button so somebody can help her with her pain. It's a lot to manage.
Yeah. So my situation is a little bit different, but kind of the same as well. So my mom is also elderly and has just spent 4 months in the hospital.
Wow.
They've just released her like 2 weeks ago. But she's on constant steroids and painkillers. And the word that we use is confabulate. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So confabulation is where they make up something that sounds like it might be true because it's easier in their head to tell a story that might be true than to admit that they either can't remember or don't know, or that something. Wow. Yeah, it's like a mental defense, like a psychological defense.
Yeah.
So my mom's in that situation. She does actually have an appointment coming up to test her cognizance. She's a bit older than your mum, but I absolutely empathize with that. What's different is that I'm doing it from 4,000 miles away.
Yeah.
I can't go and sit.
Yeah.
I don't have that opportunity. So I video call and I sit and chat and we reminisce about the old times when we can. And we especially with her having been in performing as a serious hobby for her. I mean, I think she could have been a pro, but as a serious hobby for her.
Yeah.
And so we talk about that stuff. We talk about the work I'm doing. And because she's interested, we talk about the kids, all that stuff. You just talk about stuff, and the hard thing is when I see and hear, and it's an obvious like confabulation, is to not catch them out in the lie. Just go with it.
Yeah,
just go with the flow and help them get through it that way.
Yeah.
With my dad. Probably the last 6 months or so, again, dealing with it from 4,000 miles away. He would, I think, recognize my name, but I'm not sure he knew who I was. Does that make sense? The name was familiar, but I'm not sure because I'm now an adult and 60 years old, and I don't think he quite he
didn't put the relational part on it. It's like, I know.
He didn't know who I was. He knew I was somebody that. Same with my mom. He knew her name. They had divorced when I was 12. Or something, but they'd remain friends and all the rest of that. And I think he thought he was married to my mum, and my mum didn't disavow that. She allowed him to think that. So we had that. As we had all of that. So I don't think there's a right way, actually, but try and give time. Really, spend time and sit and just be.
Yeah. Like you said, there's no advantage to calling out the incorrective,
No.
Whatever, because that could either make them more belligerent, angry, blah, 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 defensive, combative.
What do you win by doing that?
Nothing. And that then tarnishes any other further memories you may be able to have in those moments, that video call, that whatever, just to be present. And a lot of times.
And from 4,000 miles away, and even like my sister, who is, 5 miles away, we both know the clock's ticking.
Yeah.
And we're stealing, so for us, it's like, it's a long goodbye. Right. And my wife didn't have that. Her mom had a heart attack suddenly, unexpectedly, and we were in the UK and she's here in the States. So same thing. It's too far away to react quickly enough. So Sandra didn't have that opportunity, and we've talked quite a lot about which would you prefer. If you had to choose one, which would you prefer?
Right.
Prefer's not the right word, but they create entirely different mental experiences of how you remember your parents.
Yeah, and that happened with my wife. Her mother passed fairly quickly, and she didn't have I think she was in her 60s. She didn't have a big, chance to say goodbye. I mean, they had said some words, but it'll always be a shock when it happens.
Right. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? If there's a sudden traumatic event like that, you go, oh, I wish.
Right.
I wish I had.
Yeah.
I wish I had done that, or seen them again, or held their hand one more time, or whatever, that kind of thing. The situation that we're in with, an elderly parent with a long-term health issue is dealing with that, the recognition that the clock is ticking, the recognition that every day could be the last day, and that's equally hard to deal with. But it's happening in real time.
Yeah.
I think when it happens suddenly, it's equally hard to deal with, but it's a reflective process.
Yeah.
So there is no right answer to that. There's no way of winning that.
No. And that's what I have to remind myself when I go to the hospital and sit with Mom, and even if, again, sit there 5 hours or whatever, and she doesn't even realize I'm there because she's asleep the whole time, that at least I have the opportunity to be there. And there are times that I get frustrated with her because I feel like, what's going on with my business, that I'm, just sitting in a hospital room type of thing. But that's where I need to be because I don't know when whatever is going to happen. And I need to let her know that I need her to know that I'm there.
Yes. And I think where, if you're, again, perhaps in some ways we're both very fortunate, and it creates challenges that we're in a business that allows, self-employed entrepreneurial business that allows us to walk away. There's no one saying you can't walk away to go and deal with stuff. So we have that freedom of choice. But on the other side of it, if the money you're earning is paying the bills and feeding your family, when you do that one other thing, this bit might suffer. Yeah. There's that double pull that you've got responsibilities on both ways, and that can be a challenge sometimes about, when my mom went into hospital most recently in November, and she was very ill. There were moments where my sister was basically saying she might not see Christmas. She had C. diff. She was not responding to antibiotics. She was on drips. She was, they basically were like, okay, we're going to pump her full of these, the strongest steroids that we dare give a human, which can have side effects, but we think it might be the only way we can get her through it.
Right.
And I had to make that choice about, do I walk away and fly to the UK, whatever? And I had to come to the choice of whether I was going to do that or not.
Yeah.
And she has pulled through, and she is now home. That's so great. I'm like, and hugely relieved that I didn't do that, because if I had, my mother might have gone, "Why are you here?
Right.
What's happening that's so bad that you've come from
4,000
America?"
miles. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
That might have been a strain for her. You know? And so, all that stuff goes through your head.
Yeah. Well, like you said, there's no perfect way to.
There really isn't a right way of dealing with it. You've got to make your choice at the time and be comfortable that the choice you make, every choice you make on a day-by-day basis, is something that I learned from one of my old sales managers back in the day. He said, when you make a choice thinking that at the time it's the right one. You never make a choice with the hope or the expectation that it's the wrong one. Because I had asked him, I had interviewed for another job, and I was I guess there was a little bit of doubt whether I should leave the company I was with and go and work for this new company. And I asked him, I said, "Do you think I'm making the right decision?" Not wanting to take responsibility for it, I suppose.
Right.
And he said, whenever you're making a choice, you're making it because you think it's the right one. And I was, I've carried that with me ever since. So whatever choice you make it because you think it's the right one.
All right, Ian, it's time now for the third segment of the show. It is time now for the Fast Five.
Okay.
The Fast Five. It's time now for the Fast Five. Fast Five. Sorry, I'm still working on a theme song for the Fast Five. It's a work in progress, but we'll get there one day. It's only 5 seasons in, and I still don't have anything, but it's okay. The Fast Five is powered by Poddex. It's an app created by my friend Travis Brown. If you go to chewingthefatbr.com/Poddex, we'll give you the link to download it onto your phone of choice. It's made for podcasters, but they're great icebreaker questions. It's no wrong answers. I don't care what you think. There's no wrong answers. Just
we just said every answer you give, the time you make it, you think it's the right one.
Yeah. First thing comes off the top of your head. You ready?
Probably not.
Well, we're going to go anyway. Here we go. Question number 1. What did your 15-year-old self imagine you'd be doing right now?
Gosh, when was I almost 15? Probably teaching at a high school.
Okay. Any specific subject? I know you talked about
maths or science.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay.
Which I did do, but I wasn't very good at it.
Okay. Question number 2. If someone left you a cottage somewhere in the countryside in their will, where would you want the cottage to be located?
Does it have to be in the countryside?
No, I can be wherever, just a cottage, wherever. Yeah.
On the Thames,
Really?
within striking distance of London.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. It's just that's just a place that you love going. Is the hustle? Is it the bustle? Is it the energy? Because I've seen the Thames. It's not pretty water.
It just depends on where you are.
Oh, okay.
You go upstream, away from London, Richmond and beyond. It's beautiful countryside.
Oh.
So my view of that is you get the beauty and the silence and the solitude of being in the countryside, and you're a hop and a skip from one of the most culturally diverse, thriving community and creative cities in the world.
I love that. That's a great answer. Question number 3. What would constitute a perfect day for you?
3 phone calls from 3 different agents offering me a national TV campaign.
I love that.
Well, it's a work day. My kids, ringing and saying something really good happened to them.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I love that. Question number 4. It's a classic question here. Toilet paper, over or under?
Oh, over.
Over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't get caught on the wall.
That's good. I've heard people have actually quoted that apparently the patent, the U.S. patent for toilet paper shows that the paper goes over the top in the patent illustration.
Yeah, they got it right.
But then there are people who's like, well, it goes under, and that way if a spider's on it, it'll come out and you can see, as opposed to not knowing that it's there. And I'm like, what is it? Just get a pest control agency if you're worried about the spiders and stuff.
Yeah.
It's so weird. All right, question number 5. If someone made a movie about your life, who would play you?
As a young man?
It's your life, so
my
it
life.
could be any.
But someone has to pay me through my entire life. Well, with that whole thing, we saw it recently with Tom Hanks. Why don't I choose Tom? I have been told. Someone came up to me in a supermarket in Savannah and said, "Has anyone ever told you look like Tom Hanks?"
Really?
Which I don't think I do particularly. But,
I don't think you do either. But I mean,
yeah. But let's go with Tom Hanks, or on behalf of my youngest daughter, another Tom Hiddleston. Because she's going to see him in Much Ado About Nothing in London and next week. So she's very excited about that.
Yeah. No, that's great. Those are great answers. And that is our Fast Five. And that's the show. Woo! Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you coming into the studio on your way back home. Thank you again for a great workshop. I hope you continue to do that because you have a great knack for teaching as well as the talents that you have.
Yeah, it's a scarcity value thing. I have no right now desire to run a whole other coaching business, but I do put my head over the parapet once in a while and go, hey, I've got some stuff I'd like to share. Who wants to come?
Yeah.
So if you see me at a conference, I think I'll be speaking at One Voice this year.
Okay.
But that might be the last one for a couple of years. So.
Okay. And is that the One Voice Dallas or
in
One
Dallas.
Voice UK? Okay. Very nice.
In
Very
Dallas.
Nice. If people want to keep up with you, or maybe they need the British Voice, what's the best way that they could do that?
Well, anywhere on the internet, if you search The British Voice, I'll pop up somewhere. So on Instagram, it's at The British Voice. It's probably the easiest one. My website is british-voiceovers.com.
Okay, excellent. I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes as well. Ian, thank you again for stopping by.
Hey, Robert, it's been a blast.
Yeah. I wish you nothing but success in everything that you have coming and a safe trip back home to you.
Well, and let's say we wish nothing but every listener who listens to this success because everyone deserves it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
And if you would like to support this podcast, I'd appreciate it if you bought me a coffee at chewingthefatbr.com. But until next time, I look forward to the chance we have to sit a spell and chew the fat.